welcome, Martin. Thank you so much for joining us today. And AviaDev are absolutely delighted to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So I wanted to kind of dive into where you guys are at now and, how things are evolving for you and what we can expect from the future. So Air Baltic really stopped flying in mid-March, and you didn't really operate any passenger flights for about 2 months. And when you restarted, I know that you said that it was going to be kind of a small at first operation and gradually ramping up. Can you talk me through where we are now in terms of aircraft flying and how much of the network has been restored?
Yeah, you're correct. We stopped flying for 62 days, so no passenger flying apart from some repatriation flights. And when we started again, we had a very nice start because we had just 4 aircraft and then adding 1 aircraft per week. And it all looked very good. We were doing very well in July and also the beginning of August. But then because of local restrictions, we couldn't fly to countries where the COVID number per 100,000 passenger was exceeding 25, and then we had to stop these flights again, which means that week by week increase in passenger booking came to a plateau, which we reached, and now it's actually going down because the restrictions in Latvia are tougher than anywhere else, because here you have to do a quarantine of at least 10 days as of today if you come from a country where the number is 16. So very, very low. And that means for us, the bookings for the future at the moment are stabilizing. So we have reached like a plateau, waiting now for these restrictions to go and maybe be replaced by testing like other countries do. Then we will see immediately again an increase. The reason for that is that we have the right size aircraft, and we saw that in July and the beginning of August. And we saw it also now when we added a few destinations where there was a restriction lifted that we could not fly. The moment we fly, passengers are booking. So there is a demand for what we do. And using Riga as a hub, of course, helps as well. And I think the right aircraft size which we have is very, very good in these times, because the load factors are not as high as they used to be.
Brilliant, thank you. That's a lovely introduction, and I think we'll come back to a lot of those points, in particular regarding the aircraft and the restrictions. But in keeping with the theme of this conference, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your kind of route planning and development and kind of where we're going with that. So I remember towards the end of last year, there was a raft of new routes planned for 2020. There was Hamburg, Rome, Nice and Zurich from Tallinn. I could go on, Gothenburg, Hamburg, Zurich, Dubrovnik, all from Vilnius. And Manchester, I was very excited about, obviously being in my home country, from Riga. All slated for launch between March and May. And a lot of these I know have dropped off the schedule subsequently, but are they still on the cards? And when do you see these routes happening, if at all?
So it's not happening this year, that's for sure. Some of it we opened. So we did from Vilnius, for example, a couple of routes, which was easier. It was an opportunity to do that rather than doing routes from Riga, as there were different local rules on quarantine. But what we see now, of course, going to the winter, we need to stabilize a winter network. We want to go back to all of these places because Air Baltic has been so successful, otherwise we wouldn't have opened it. And we were in January, February heading there that we could, and actually we were above our own expectations. So we're in this crisis now, like everybody else, but the concept itself we had at Air Baltic is the same. And so the moment we see ourselves being able to fill an aircraft with a decent load factor on these routes, we will be opening these routes, but not now for the winter season. So earliest then for the next summer.
Okay, so we can expect some announcements in the future on those.
Yes, definitely, of course, because we have a lot of aircraft on order.
Yeah.
And I keep saying this, there's a lot of negativity in our industry, and there will be an end to this crisis. And Air Baltic is doing nothing else than being prepared to grow out of the crisis.
Absolutely. So you have made some route announcements for next summer already. I think you're looking at 82, or last time I checked you were, which is 21% more than this year. And looking at the destinations you've included for next summer, there's a really healthy mix of both business and leisure routes. So, you know, we've got sort of Venice, Rhodes and Palma in there, but alongside places like Trondheim, Manchester, yay, and Baku. So do you think it's important for airlines to balance this kind of business and leisure going forward, considering the predictions that business travel demand may take longer to bounce back?
I think it's very important right now to do that. We were doing it because it's part of our natural business model, the connectivity to and from the Baltics. And connectivity means you offer a lot of destinations, but to do it coming from a smaller area with not so much demand, we do it with a smaller aircraft. But the combination of transporting people for leisure reason or for business reason, that hasn't changed. What has changed is that the business traffic, of course, will take longer to recover. Lots of companies having restrictions. But what I see is that there's a very strong demand for anybody to travel again, and businesses need to also recover. All kinds of businesses who have maybe switched to online will still need to have to do things by meeting people face to face. And I think we will see this once the restrictions on visiting a country are lifted. First, we will see the leisure traffic returning, but visiting friends and family traffic. But we will also see the business traffic coming back. On short haul, of course, much faster. But key to this is that these restrictions, which are everywhere different, are lifted. We would see it already now because the demand is there. And we see this whenever we open something, people want to travel. Then they even book, but then a restriction makes it impossible to go. So that's the difficulty for next summer. All of these routes, of course, we want to do them, but we need to be able to fly there. If the COVID numbers or the regulations still in place as they are today, then it might be difficult to open one or the other route.
Absolutely. And I was interested to see you launch a route to Kiev from Vilnius quite recently. And I presume this was partly in response to the EASA's ban on Ukraine international flying into Europe. What was the thought process behind this? Is this a route that we're likely to see sustained in the longer term?
Yeah, that's the plan. So we want to have it, because we have it in parallel from Riga. So we fly Riga-Kiev. It's a very successful route, and the demand is very high also from Vilnius. And as our plan is to have all three Baltic capitals connected to the key points in our network, it's a logical consequence that we're offering it. And looking at the route portfolio right now and the opportunities, that was a route which we thought we better launch now, because the competitive situation there made us decide that, and we will start as of October. Of course, again, there's lots of issues happening every week, every day there's news, but the strategic plan is that route makes a lot of sense in addition to the Riga-Kiev route.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's enough about routes, to be honest. Let's talk about what I love about your airline, and that's your fleet. So you're coming out of the crisis an all A220 airline, and you're the first in the world to be an only A220 operator. You know, here at Simple Flying, we're massive fans of the A220, and we fully believe that post-COVID, it's probably the best aircraft out there to operate. You know, I'm sure you'll agree with me. It's mega efficient. It's got an amazing range. And from a passenger's point of view, it's a real crowd pleaser. Do you think being an A220 operator puts you ahead of the competition on the road to recovery?
We are definitely in a very good position to have the A220 as our key aircraft, and now as the only aircraft, because not only that it has the right size to start any kind of route, you can start a very short route, but also a pretty long route up to 7 hours. The comfort on that aircraft is unbeaten in that category. And then the big point, which at the moment is not being talked about, is the sustainability and the efficiency of that aircraft. And that is actually the biggest advantage going forward if we look in the next 10 years. That's why we have so many on order, and our current fleet is 22. One aircraft actually had its first test flight today in Montreal, will be delivered hopefully next week. And we're taking more of these aircraft. So yes, we have a competitive advantage as we can start with the aircraft and maintain a route, because with 145 seats in a business class and economy config, we are well positioned to start after that crisis.
It's a fantastic aircraft, and we're delighted to see that you guys are fully embracing it. And it seemed early on in the crisis as if you couldn't get your hands on them fast enough. I remember in late April, you said that you could even see your plan of having a fleet of 50 by 2025 accelerated by as much as 2 years. Now I know you've agreed a delivery schedule that will see them coming in all completed by 2024. So it's still a year earlier than originally planned. Do you really think that you're going to be able to put all these aircraft to good use with, the predictions that demand is going to take some time to recover?
You have to see that we were flying until February with 38 aircraft. So to cover our network, we needed 38 aircraft. We have stopped flying the turboprops and the Boeings, so we are only flying 22 aircraft today. So if I just want to go back to something I had before, just for that reason, I would need around 40 of the Airbuses, because that's the only one I use. So there's no issue in having 50 aircraft in 2024. More the opposite, we have additional 30 options, and we're going to exercise options to deal with the demand coming beyond the year 2024. That is not announced yet, but that's why we have the options. And the adjusted schedule now reflects today's reality, but also makes sure that we can grow and go back in 2025 to the same point where we wanted to go to before the crisis. The change is now that we're doing it all on the Airbus A220 rather than flying the turboprops for another 3 years. So actually it's an upgrade to our business plan, but an adjustment to the delivery schedule. And we're very happy with it. We're getting 3 more aircraft this year, and we need them. We definitely need them. And if next summer starts stronger than currently anticipated, we will be very happy to have 25, and looking for then to have next year even 7 more.
Fantastic. That's so good to hear a thread of positivity in these really challenging times. And, I think one of the things that's challenging European airlines in particular is the ever fluctuating border restrictions. I'm in the UK, and it seems like every other week there's a new destination added that we can't go to without quarantining for 14 days when we come back. So I really wanted to talk to you about where you think the industry is going in general. What do we need to unlock travel again? Is it these border restrictions to stop? Do we need a vaccine? Is it more testing? What do you see as being the catalyst for a full and healthy restart?
I think the first thing which has to stop is the media hypes about COVID, because there's no other subject, and every day in every country there's these new horror stories. It seems to be like that COVID is horror. And I think that makes not only our industry, that makes the whole economy at the moment focusing on this. So yeah, I think the media also has a responsibility to report about facts, and not every morning some nonsense, which then the next week is changed again. The governments should come together in Europe and do what the EU Commission recommends, to come for a common rule for all countries. It's very poor to see that there is Europe and they are unable to come up with a common regulation. They're basically taking apart everything they have built in the past on free travel. And of course, the aviation industry is seen as an industry which is suffering more than others. We are suffering more than others because we offer a fast, reliable transport, and that is now our problem. If you go slow by bus or train, you're not as restricted. Yeah. On the vaccine, of course, it would be good to have one. I'm not sure whether we have a vaccine that will then cover all the different kinds of COVID. The quarantine rules, I think we have all learned that doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah, but still there's a lot of countries, including Latvia, who say that you have to quarantine if you come even without any symptoms, or self-isolate. We will see these things hopefully changing, but there's not a single country which can change it. It has to be Europe. Otherwise, if one country has it, the other one doesn't have it, we are still restricted.
Absolutely. And where do you see testing playing a role in this? Do you think that's important, to test on arrival or test before departure?
I think testing makes sense when you come from an area where there is high COVID numbers, so that you can eliminate we see it now in all the countries, the numbers going up. There's very different take from that. There's countries like Sweden now who have done a different approach, where people say, okay, it's working like this, but then you have countries like Spain who seem to not get out of it, and numbers are just going rocket high. Yeah. I think the Commission's proposal to say that if you exceed a certain number of infections including the number of tests combined then with testing makes sense. But what we cannot have is that we start testing when there is just a very minor number of new infections. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But at a certain level, let's say what Spain has now, then I would say testing would help to make sure, and proper testing, not testing when you come and have no symptoms and then that's it. I think there should be a proper test done at a time when the test makes sense. We have so many scientific research now on this that we should be able to come up with something which makes sense. Unfortunately, when you open the newspapers, you just read some horror news, which does not give confidence back to travelers.
No.
So, yeah, I think we need to cancel the restrictions on quarantining, because people know that doesn't make sense, followed by testing where it makes sense, so at levels where it makes sense. Because COVID is there, we should, of course, depress it as much as we can, but we should do it in a coordinated approach for the whole of Europe and not every country doing their own thing.
Absolutely. Teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. Martin Gauss, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Thanks for talking to you. Thank you.